Hello and welcome to Dark Days Radio, episode number 36, number 3 dozen. I'm of course your host Mike, and tonight I'm joined by Chris.
Hi there. Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, it's just a typical wet weekend in Germany.
Cool, and we're also joined by an art director, one of White Wolf's luminaries from even before Vampire the Masquerade came out. The man, the myth, the urban legend, Ragin Rich Thomas. How's it going, Rich?
Hi there, Rich.
That's a nice intro, thanks.
So how's everyone's gaming been? Doing anything cool?
Ooh, let me think. I am one step closer to having a gaming group sorted out over here. So we met up with someone who is actually into playing some New World of Darkness, so that's a good start. And he seems to know quite a few people in and around the area and quite happy to play in English and so forth. And also, I have a feeling that I may have to do some intro games for the Dusseldorf gaming group meetups. You know, the meetup.com web space thing?
Yep.
Well, there's a group of gamers that play board games and so forth, and I joined it because I thought, hell, I might just find some people to game with. And
Sure.
it's mainly made up of kind of like a mix of international people who've moved to Germany for whatever reasons. So it's predominantly English speaking, but they're like, you seem to know a lot about this. Could you show us how to play and what to get into? And it's like, yeah, I think I know a certain intro game I could run for them. So I will be pulling out ghost stories and running something out of that for a group of people.
Awesome.
So, yeah, always spreading the love of World of Darkness, the love being your heart ripped out and forced to buy more books.
Always one of my favorite parts.
Cool.
So, yeah. Oh, and also I've played some more Secret World with James, so which is good fun. It's nice to kill monsters.
Yeah. As I mentioned on the posters, we should see if Peter from wadnews.net has been playing that, because I know he got a bunch of the beta keys, so it'd be pretty interesting to see what he thinks about it, because he's obviously pretty excited about this World of Darkness MMO that we still don't really know much about.
Do you think he is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Rich, have you been playing any games or getting anything started? Do you have time for that?
Well, we finished up about a month ago. We finished up a Chronicle we were playing of V20 that we started back in. Well, I guess didn't start it. Well, yeah, we played the first game of it at Grand Masquerade last year, and we were playing that over Skype, and then we started going into Google. Was it Google Hangouts? And that was actually really good, because you could also pull in a bunch of the little Google doodads, like little doodle things where Eddie Webb was running it, and he would put up his map, and then we could all go in with our different colors, and I'm going to run behind this wall over here and draw a little arrow and stuff, and then of course I had to draw little pictures of the monsters attacking us, and a couple of wangs got on there, I think. I don't know how that happened, but so right. we put that on hiatus. Eddie's repowering up. Hopefully, we'll get started on that again, and also just started up a D&D 4 adventure with my kids that we haven't played. We were playing for a while there, and then we kind of had a little bit of a break, and so we're back on that, and I'm just delving into Diablo 3 myself. So,
Okay.
So that's what I tend to do in between emails and longer conversations and stuff like that. It's just, hey, you know what? I have about 15 minutes. Need to cool down a little bit. Let's go down into this dungeon, see what I can discover.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, because I had a quick go on Diablo 3 when it was in, they had the demo for it, and I didn't kind of it didn't really grab my attention, but I can definitely see it as being you can play it quite casually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice to have casual games like that.
It's the only way. Even when I play MMOs now, I have to play them on a casual level, because I just can't devote 5 hours to doing a raid or anything like that. It just life is just not allowing that to happen.
Cool. All right, guys. So, for those of you that don't really know, I've been in grad school for the past couple of months, so I haven't really been doing much gaming. And this summer I decided I should get back in the saddle, run a Chronicle, and I was thinking that I was going to run Werewolf. except it would be a kinfolk game, and it would happen after the apocalypse. So after trying to convince people to perhaps give Werewolf a go, and then explaining that, wait, there's not actually going to be werewolves and all that stuff, they're kind of flaking out on me. So it hasn't been really working out. I don't know what I'm going to do. I might just cut my losses and just run Cthulhu Tech instead.
Yeah. But, I need to run that. We need to review that at some point.
yeah. It's definitely, for World of Darkness fans, it's really up your alley, I'd say.
Yeah.
Definitely heavily inspired by White Wolf.
I've been kind of thinking that a mech game, the mech style game of that would be quite fitting to play it as kind of like a Google Plus or Skype game, because then it gives you the feeling like you're in your own little mech
with
in your
cockpit.
No one else around.
Oh,
you're in your cockpit. Yeah.
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah. So hopefully I'll be getting something written up for that and proposed to people in the near future, which should be awesome. But let's get on with the episode, and I guess we'll move on over to the mailbag segment. So we got some mail, got some comments. One is from Laughing Hyena over at the Rage CCG forums. It was actually posted on our Podbean site, and she let us know that the Circle of Red, which we were discussing a whole lot with Matt McFarland last episode, is actually, they're originally from Werewolf the Dark Ages, the second edition supplement. So that's good to know where they originally came from. And she also brought up that if you want to know more about cults in Werewolf, a very good supplement is Blasphemies for Werewolf the Forsaken. And that was a little embarrassing that I didn't recognize that, because I got it right next to me here. So I should have known that one. Another thing is that our Apostrophes page has been really busy. A lot of questions coming in for Rich Thomas, of course. And we've also got a really awesome game of Hunt the Reference, which is kind of from back at the WGPRN forums. We had this quiz game going, and it started again. We've got nearly 50 comments on it, so a lot of good questions coming up. And I just posted one, and we'll see if anyone can answer it. It's a bit of a tough one, I'd say.
What's the question?
I don't know, because you'd be able to answer it, Rich.
I probably, I probably wouldn't. That's one of the things.
Shall we test it?
We get
let me see.
Huge kick out of is how sometimes the details are not as wedged into our brains as the fans.
Got it.
The question actually came from a V20 White Wolf blogcast with Rich Thomas and Eddie Webb. So I would expect that you'd know the answer, since you're the one who brought it up originally.
You're so optimistic. I probably don't remember what I said.
All right.
Eddie will tell you that happens all the time.
Okay. Well, but suffice it to say, check out Posterous and see if you can answer this question, which I'm not going to mention on the show.
I won't blurt it out.
Anyway, we also got a secret frequency submission from Malleus concerning bath salts. I can't imagine why.
Well, it's slightly related to a poll that I put up on our Facebook page of what kind of things people wanted to listen, well, as an idea, and one of the things was kind of related to bath salts. So, yeah.
Yeah, zombies.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I think that's just about it for the mailbag. Chris, did we get anything else?
I think, again, we had because now I've actually got the most recent Darkling out for Chronicle Design, so just another thank you to the Fear the Boot guys, because they gave us a shout out on their most recent show, or the one before that. And otherwise, I've got all our Google Analytics now up and running, so I know what things people are interested in when they hit the Podbean site and the Posterous site. So hopefully we can use that to make better choices on what stuff we should include in the shows.
Interesting.
Oh, yeah, that was really cool. I saw that there was one Russian person that came to the site, and he was there for 30 minutes. So I'm not sure if he was just really enthralled or trying to hack it.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, now.
Well, I don't know. I mean, who knows? All right, cool. So that wraps up the mailbag segment, and we're going to go move on over to White Wolf News. All right, White Wolf news. So, what products have come out since the last show? Well, Victorian Lost. Very, very good looking. Glad it's out.
Which is awesome. I've basically spent the entire last weeks just kind of slowly making my way through it, so it's a great little supplement.
Yep.
Yeah, I think someone had
Glad you guys think so.
It's as someone said, it's a good kind of like it's a good quick primer to run Changeling games in Victorian London, and also people have said like it's great to use alongside say Victorian Age Vampire and maybe books which are also more in depth on the Victorian period in general.
Exactly.
To marry with it, and then you've got the whole works for it. But on its own, you've got a lot there. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to run anything set in Victorian period right anytime soon. Maybe if I think I would use it to help me if I was to do a flashback for a Victorian Age Venice episode, which would be quite interesting because the Victorians loved Venice. So, but yeah, there's assassin there. There's like some motley straight up to use and quite a few characters and 2 new kiths, and yeah, there's a whole load of extra bits in there and just general discussion on how to get the it's more on how to get the mood and the feel right for the games rather than being an in-depth discussion of what the Victorian period was like.
Right.
There's 100 books on that.
Absolutely, that was exactly where we were going with it. There's certainly, and this is again something that we go back and forth on as we discuss these things. But my feeling was, and Eddie agreed that that you could find out so much information about the Victorian era, including just going through Victorian Vampire. If your library kisses are just our stuff, you've already got a reference material, even just with our stuff. That it was more important to show how the changing society was affected by all this than what was Victorian society. And so really trying to keep the focus on those guys and put in a lot of bits and pieces that you could then run with yourself.
Yeah, I mean, like for instance, like when we want to run what's the game? So one of them like Unhallowed Metropolis, because that's neo-Victorian. A book that called The Victorian House, and it's an in-depth discussion of what Victorian life was like for the housewife and family and so forth. And we reference that every so often for all the small little like what all the customs and society would kind of do as they meet and greet each other. But you don't need all that in a Victorian Lost supplement.
Yeah, I mean that was our thing on it. Also, I mean, one of the things was each one of these historical things that we've done with New Age Vampire, with Mage Noir, and now with Victorian Lost are also not supposed. They were never designed to be 220-page books or anything like that. I mean, that's just not what we're doing with these things right now. So, it's hopefully sweet, a lot of meat right there, and not a lot of extraneous talking going on in these books,
So, Rich, I got a question for you. I haven't picked this up yet, but I'm thinking about getting it print on demand. And where is it supposed to go on my shelf? Is it supposed to go next to the Changeling the Lost stuff, or the Victorian Age era, Victorian Age Vampire stuff? Because it's got the design of Changeling, but it's got the color,
right?
Victorian Age Vampire. What do you think?
I think you can go either way depending on what you're doing. If you're mostly playing a Lost thing and you want to you could do flashbacks, or you just want to do a different kind of campaign, you can stick it with your Changeling. And if you're very much into Victorian Vampire and Victorian era, then it will fit right into your Victorian slot there next to Vampire.
Excellent answer.
Multi-purpose.
Cool. And moving on. This is actually not on the show notes, but I just realized that we didn't put it on here. Children of the Revolution Kickstarter, funded and everything. It's good to go.
Yes,
and
we did.
We made it to the stretch goal for the Red List, correct?
Yes.
Outstanding. And that's Matt McElroy is going to be writing that up, correct?
I believe he's probably running it up this weekend.
Wow. Great.
It was very exciting. That was one of the reasons why it was so great. The Kickstarter format allows you to get involved with projects that maybe there would be harder to fit into a schedule or figure out a way that they fit into what you're trying to accomplish. But like something like the Red List, where it's like, hey, that's a great idea. He's incredibly enthused about it, and it totally ties into the sort of the theme of what we were doing right there with the Children Revolution. That it's just seems like a really nice fit, and we get a whole new thing out of it, which I think is pretty cool. So, yeah. Yeah, we're pretty excited about it. I'm waiting for the text to come in from the editor and Justin maybe sometime next week, and most of the art is getting into my hands right now. So I'm hoping to move this one a little bit faster than we moved V20 Companion, which was our first Kickstarter, and so every stage along the way is slower, and you're kind of figuring out all the details as you move along.
Next up on the show notes is No Grand Masquerade. I saw a pretty lengthy letter from Chris McDonough discussing the reasons why, mostly citing that it's expensive, and they're focused a lot on Dust right now.
Yeah.
Dust 5.14, I believe, is the full title. So, but White Wolf is still supporting its fans with a Mind's Eye Society LARP event, which is very cool, and I'm happy to see it still going on. It's really reminiscent of the International Camarilla Convention, I feel, which is kind of what the Grand Masquerade co-opted in the past.
Or let's I've certainly used the same excitement to put together a slightly larger and more involved experience for everybody over that time period. But this will be, as I understand it. This will be a smaller thing in Atlanta, and yet still, what they didn't want to do is they didn't want to say, "Hey, it's another Grand Masquerade," and then have it not be so grand, which kind of diminish the excitement level whenever a new Grand Masquerade could be done. So I was calling it a petite masquerade, but I don't think anybody wanted to call it that. But that's what I call it.
That's fine. So Rich, do you think there's going to be any way for non-LARPers to get involved, or anything special maybe that weekend? I know someone was saying maybe an SAS.
As far as I know, that the Wrecking Crew is still going to be doing tabletop games at this event in particular.
Okay.
Last time I talked to Dave and Rick, who's the guy who's pulling the whole event together. So I think they're going to be doing that. If we can do it in time, which I'm hoping we certainly can, we would be wanting to do the Werewolf 20th SAS there, as like we did with the V20 SAS at Grand Masquerade last year. So that's something I'm working with Dave on right now to try to make sure he gets the right files. And so what we did last year is we actually took the outline for the SAS, it was Dust to Dust, and we sent it over to Dave before it was actually written, so he could start hitting it with hammers to say, here's how these things kind of play out when you're in you're in a convention sitting around a table with a bunch of people you don't know. Here's how to make these things exciting and cool and interesting, and I think it really helped Dust to Dust when it all came together to be a much more enjoyable and very usable SAS. So we're going to try to do the same thing with the W21. If I told you the title to the W21, though, you would immediately get some ideas on what it was about, so I'm not going to do that.
Okay. I mean, I can respect that.
Well, like I say, we have to work it out with Dave on the outline for it and let him start messing around with it a little bit with his Wrecking Crew, and then I'm sure we will announce it.
And of course, there's been a lot more information for Mummy coming out. A lot about the magic and the tiered powers. I believe the magic's called the Utterance, which at least that's their most powerful magic.
Yes.
Very interesting. A lot of new ideas.
You utter a curse, don't you?
Perhaps, but it seems to be more just dealing with the impossible or making that, possible. Interesting stuff. Feels a lot different than what we had with, say, Mummy the Resurrection or Mummy Second Edition back in the Old World of Darkness. So,
I think people coming from, because we had 3 different Mummy experiences.
Yeah.
People coming at it from that direction, plus people from the New World of Darkness who are aware of mummy-like themes in Prometheus or in Geist. All those different viewpoints have to come together on this one, and so I think what you're going to find is there's going to be stuff that really seems new from one point of view, and might, once you see it in context in the book, go, oh, I see how that all fits together. I think Colin Solomon and his crew have done a really good job with this. As huge World of Darkness fans themselves, I think it's going to be something special.
Okay, good. And something we missed on the last episode, which I feel is actually really important to bring up, is that the Geist 1.1 revision came out, and this is huge in my opinion.
Yeah.
I've been very much a supporter of Catalyst Game Labs, who very frequently put out new revisions of their books with errata and all that kind of stuff, and I'm really happy to see White Wolf going in that direction as well. And the new print-on-demand model really lends itself to this as well.
So, certainly, I mean, if PDFs are the easiest thing to do the revisions to, right? I mean, they're it's an electronic file, and you make the changes, you upload it, and everyone who's clicked that it's okay to get updates. So click that it's okay to get updates if you buy the PDFs, guys. You will get for free. You'll get whatever the newest version of these things are, and we try when we know there's something that really needs to be fixed to get in there and do something about it.
Yeah, I really need to pick up a copy of it because it's part of the reason, because I knew it was coming out, and it's part of the reason I left my hard copy back at my mother-in-law's, because obviously with moving country I was like, it's a book that I'm not going to use straight away, and I know there's a revision, and now it's here. So I need to get it.
Yeah, and it was Ethan was the guy who spearheaded that, and Aileen was the one who pulled it all together. So it's the same team that did Geist to begin with, except very focused on fixing up some of the alterations and some of the things that slipped in there that we still have not figured out how some older files were thrown into the actual printed.
Oh, right.
There was just a couple weird things that went on with that, and strange stuff. But it definitely was something that was been preying on all of our minds, that we needed to do something better than what we had put out there. It's still awesome concepts were contained within, but there was a lot of little broken parts.
Gotcha. We're very happy to see the new version. Now, finally, the last bit of news is not exactly White Wolf related. Well, it's White Wolf related, but the Podcast of Darkness is apparently coming back. Way back in 2005, 2006, there was another World of Darkness podcast, which had a multitude of episodes, but it kind of fell to the wayside around probably like 2007. And then, of course, in 2009, Darker Days came around. But it's coming back, and definitely want to encourage them to put out some new content. Their new episodes are not out yet, but they do have the old ones, and they can be found on limeflavor.com. We'll put a link in the show notes if you want to check out some other World of Darkness podcast goodness. And with that, I think it's time to move over to the Secret Frequency segment.
He took the stairs. I love my mom.
Tonight we explore a topic suggested to us nearly 3 years ago by Ariadna back in the WGPRN forums. This is an urban myth with roots in 3 states, each with a different origin story, but all resulting in the same sad, feral danger lurking in the woods. I'm of course referring to melon heads, the subject of folk tales in Michigan, Ohio, and Connecticut. Despite originating in 3 distinct regions, the melonheads all share the same name and similar appearance. They're described as short people, whether pygmy, midgets, or children, with enlarged craniums. Though small, the melonheads are vicious, and locals are warned not to stray too far into the woods alone. So let's look at the first location of melonheads. According to the local lore, there once stood a Junction Insane Asylum in Laketown, Michigan, where children with hydrocephalus were treated. Hydrocephalus is a nasty condition where the cranium expands as the child's skull swells with spinal fluid. It causes tunnel vision, convulsions, a variety of other disabilities, and many times death. Even more gruesome, the stretched skin over the bulging skull can be blood red from strained veins. Of course, not many doctors or nurses wanted to treat children in such a horrific state, nor did many of the locals want to deal with them. It's unclear exactly what happened to the asylum, whether it was burned or simply shut down, but the near-feral hydrocephalic children were forced into the wilderness. It isn't known exactly where the melonheads hide. Some say they reside in or around Felt Mansion. Others believe that they're found underground in a network of limestone caverns. Despite the various unknowns, hikers, bikers, and travelers have seen melonheads and less frequently are actually attacked by them. They've seen them for the past several decades. Which begs the question, how can children with a normally fatal condition still haunt the Michigan woods? In Ohio, the melonheads haunt the Cleveland suburb of Kirtland. According to legend, the melonheads were orphans under the care of a Dr. Crow, who performed experiments on the children and caused their deformities. The children eventually rose up and killed Dr. Crow, burned the home down, and retreated into the forest to feed on babies. To this day, melonheads can be sighted along Wisner Road. And while similar to the Michigan legend, one has to ask, what could Dr. Crow have done to make these children hunger for flesh? Connecticut's tale is much different in origin and presentation. The melonheads descend from a colonial family in the Shelton-Trumbull area, and they were banished for practicing witchcraft. The family retreated into the woods and began to inbreed, developing hydrocephalus. The family also resorted to cannibalism to make it through the harsh New England winters. And these days, you won't find melonheads close to civilization. They prefer to stalk the old dirt roads with tall trees and occasionally take victims. Despite being vanished for witchcraft centuries ago, you have to wonder, what sort of rituals could they be doing out there in Fairfield County's woods? So the various origins of melonheads can provide a lot of ideas for your World of Darkness game, and I'd like to suggest a couple before we ask for suggestions, of course, from Chris and from Rich. Wraith has always been a pretty disturbing game, so why not even make it more disturbing? For some grotesque body horror, you can make melonheads a form of specter that enjoys terrorizing the mortal world, specifically targeting the fetters of other wraiths. If you want to treat the idea of melonheads a bit more seriously, you can make them the ghosts of deformed children. From colonial times up until Victorian era, deformed family members were the cause of shame, and they're often hidden away. These individuals could be socially stunted, and one can only imagine their actions in the Shadowlands. In Werewolf the Apocalypse, you can actually strip away some of the more grotesque elements and make melonheads into actually the Hamid kinfolk of the Red Talon tribe. Separated from human society, these kinfolk would be nearly feral, and their interactions with humans would be obviously strained. For Changeling the Lost, melonheads are without a doubt hobgoblins. If the aforementioned Felt Mansion is located on the top of a powerful trod, you can have an entire story investigating the structure, the limestone caverns, and the extra-dimensional hedge, as well as interacting with whatever stumbles out into the immortal realm. Of course, your characters have to make a decision. These melonheads have been terrorizing the countryside for generations. So will they allow them to continue, or stop the hobgoblins and lose a potential entrance to the hedge? Promethean lets you present the saddest possibility for melonheads. As a throng of the created travel through Michigan's wilds, they are stalked by children in the woods. Finally confronting or perhaps capturing one of the melonheads, they learn the terrible truth. These children, all of them, suffer from deformity and disease. Saddest of all, hikers have been reporting about them for decades, but each time the police report is thrown aside as a hoax and the story relegated to tabloids. Whenever a melonhead tries to approach a hiker or passing driver, they're scared off, isolating this community of unfortunates. So how can a throng, themselves misunderstood by moral society, help these poor, suffering souls? So that's the story of melonheads. What do you guys think? Any other ideas?
Keeping with the Changeling the Lost route, you could go with some of the myths behind the Wizened has them being taken away by the classic grey aliens. If you want to go with that kind of route, then maybe the metalheads are the discarded mortal-born children of a Fey Lord. So that would explain maybe some of their need to feed on babies and cannibalism, because they're quite twisted in that way. And maybe then they're sort of like fetches in the sense that if they were to get the taste for changeling flesh, they would further kind of evolve and become more mad. What else would I go with? I'm trying to think of something for Geist. Nothing's really popping into my head. I think you covered most of them there, Mike. I need to think a bit.
I mean, the idea of them being just the ghosts of deformed children can work very well in Geist. It's definitely a crossover between Wraith and Geist right there.
Yeah, I think I like the take you took with Promethean and the fact that they are just, they are what they actually are, and the fact that they act as a nice kind of like morality kind of hook for the Prometheans, because obviously then they're kind of a reflection of the same problem they suffer, which is being discarded and from normal human society. And even some of the abilities of Prometheans might even be enough to kind of remove their ailments and almost cure them, which would be kind of nice. It would act as a very cool milestone, really.
I think you need to have them being, it's somehow, and you brought this up, that why have they had this longevity? Why are there still melon heads who look like giant-headed children? Why is that still going on? So the idea that they've been manipulated with and messed with. I mean, one thing is that they're not really alive anymore. They're spirits. That's one way to go. Or the other one is that whatever has been experimenting on them, it has given them some form of extended life period, whether it's a nuclear sort of thing, which I think could tie into some of the Promethean extra stuff that we did in a couple of the extra books, or potentially something more even ghoulish, where they've been kept alive by the blood of something else. Yeah. Might explain a little bit of their reddish tone as well.
Definitely.
The other again, you can go, kind of riffing off the same thing. Is a failed progenitors experiment. Also fits with that idea. Yeah.
Hey Chris, any ideas for mage? Because there's that one idea that they were perhaps practicing witchcraft in that one family.
Right.
I couldn't really come up with anything myself. I was wondering if you, since you're much more knowledgeable with Mage the Awakening.
Mage the Awakening or Mage Ascension? I'd say with Mage Ascension, I've gone with the technocracy route. If we're going with something... I mean, if you really want to go with the grotesque kind of body horror element, if they're witchcraft and magics around kind of any other beings or spirits, it's possibly the horrible thing that some horrible nightmare would be literally born from their minds and their heads. I mean, that's grotesque, but that's kind of one route you could go down with. So they're almost kind of like a lifelong kind of gestation for these entities.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of something else with Mage. There must be something about descendants of colonial era family. Banished reputation of witchcraft.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we've come up with enough ideas on it. That's for sure. It's just I always want to try and squeeze out one more, but maybe it's something to leave for the Prosperous Forum and come back to it at a later point.
I'm sure folks will have some great ideas.
Yeah, definitely. All right, cool. So anything else? Any other general ideas? Rich, do you have anything?
No, I mean, the one thing I do like is the idea that there isn't. We've said this about the New World of Darkness, at least, that one of the things we really like about it is you can't slot everybody into a particular thing. So, these guys are there, and they're doing what they're doing, and they might have come from any of these potential things. The interesting is what's their effect. I think you were starting to do a little story arc on the Throng, which is that to me is kind of interesting. Is not why they are what they are, but how is that affecting the players? And is you talk about telling this terrible human drama thing with them, which I think is really the fun part of it. Do we need to actually slot them in as they were created by X, Y, or Z so much as this horrible situation? I think that's where the beauty of it.
Yeah. Because I mean that fits with the idea. Like one of the things I kind of need to do a bit more in my own games is that not every single say in Vampire, not every time your antagonists need to be vampires. Maybe the actual story is the fact that you've got your players who are vampires, and the niche is really how do they relate?
What the hell are these horrible
things?
things?
Bad, very mortal. Yeah.
Yep.
All right,
Cool.
good stuff. Good stuff. Cool. So I think that's it for the Secret Frequency segment. And with that, let's move on over to a Q&A with Rich Thomas.
Da, 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 da.
So, Rich, what's going on, man? What's up?
Hey. Oh, well, you talked to when you're saying the recent things that we're working on. I mean, that's the tip of the iceberg for me. I'm juggling a lot of projects right now.
Absolutely, absolutely. So here you are, you're in the gaming industry. Been here for quite some time. So why don't we talk
Ridiculous
about the
amount of
origins? Talk about the
Sure.
beginning. Look, every superhero has his origin story, right?
Yep.
And you're, of course, Ragin Rich Thomas.
So you insist. And I'm sure
Are
there's
we
plenty of
about-
people I worked with in the past who would agree with you, but
Are we about to, with the superhero thing, establish that Richard and Eddie Webb are like Lex Luthor and Clark Kent then? As part of some super duo constantly at war with each other, creating this wonderful world.
Maybe. We'll get to that later, because I got a question on
Yeah,
that.
that's one of the questions, isn't it?
So Rich, how'd you get started with gaming? What's kind of your geek cred?
I was really fascinated when I was in junior high school or middle school, depending on what you want to call it now, with war gaming, board gaming, stuff that the Avalon Hill games and things like that. And yet there was no one in my immediate area when I was growing up who was equally interested in any way. So it was more of a sort of, hey, oh man, I got this great game about Alexander the Great, and he's doing the, What are those little things? Well, each one of those represents one of his armies. They're little pieces of cardboard. Yeah, but they've got these points to tell you. Oh, never mind. So, and I wound up going to what they would call Magnet High School at this point these days. And when I got there, I discovered that there was an actual club called the Strategy and Tactics Society that started as a board gaming club. When I got there, they had just discovered this new kind of game, and were anxiously awaiting the second supplement for it, which was called Blackmore, and they were just a small group about 6 or 7 guys who were really into D&D. I mean, first edition, 3 brown little pamphlets, and Greyhawk was all anybody had at that point, and I sat in on one session and I never looked back. So it was amazing. And then then Blackmore came out and was like, whoa, this is so cool. So that was really how I got started, and that was that was 70 something, 76, 77. So that's how I got into gaming as a enthusiast. And then I guess if you want me to leap forward, I can talk about how I kind of got into the gaming business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Were you involved with anything before you came to White Wolf magazine?
Most of my life has through that whole period was art. The second thing that I discovered in high school was that there was an amazing art department at the high school I went to in Philadelphia, which was Central High School, and they had just the most dedicated art professor. These are all high school students who are doing college level pieces. It was just amazing, and I wanted to be one of them, and I was once I got into additional years there. So that and going through art school was my big thing, but I never stopped playing. In fact, I even went back to my high school after I graduated to DM my D&D world for new guys who were coming on for a couple of years after I graduated. So it was those two poles, the art thing and the gaming thing were kind of simultaneous. But I never just getting the bachelor's and the master's degree in art was more than enough to keep me busy. I wasn't looking for work in that area. But once I sort of got out of there, I started sending around my portfolio to different places, sending to Dragon magazine, and I always read Dragon magazine, and there was an ad in Dragon magazine for illustrators for this new magazine, fanzine. It kind of had a feeling of both, couldn't quite tell, but they were looking for illustrators, and I did a quick illustration of a wolf killing a dragon because it was White Wolf magazine. I thought, oh, they're obviously in competition with dragons, so I'll have a wolf kill a dragon.
Nice.
And because it was little dragon and a big wolf, but and then I kind of sat on it for like a month because I was just like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say. I'm trying to get jobs in advertising, and my girlfriend at the time said, no, you've got to do it. Okay, so I did, and I said it to Stuart Wick, and he's like, oh, this is so great because you draw, and he started giving me my first assignment. And my first piece of art hit White Wolf magazine, and its circulation tripled, and that kept happening each issue that we put more and more art into it. And so Stu kept asking for more and more art, and I'm like, dude, this is I'm also doing all these other jobs, and I'm trying to get work out of getting out of grad school and trying to get a job, and so how about I hire some artists and I'll art direct some stuff? Because I had a fair number of classes that I trained in as an art director, and I was an assistant art director at an advertising agency as one of my summer jobs. So he was cool with that, and so we started getting other artists involved with it. And of course, again, the circulation just kept going up because it looked so much more professional at that point than just a fanzine that Stu had managed to put together. Great content. In terms of the writing and stuff, and but once I was able to pull in some visuals, I think the whole thing kind of came together, and that went on for a couple of years. We tried a bunch of different projects, and I also wound up freelancing then for Lion Rampant, doing logo designs and some art for them. And when they got together with Stuart and White Wolf, and Mark Reinhagen and Stu became partners. The very first thing that they put out was this nutty game called Vampire, The Masquerade, and I was still kind of I was freelance art directing and stuff, and I got a call from Stu. He's like, hey, that Vampire we put out in August? Yeah. Well, we're like we had to reprint it twice. Yeah, I know, it's awesome. Yeah, we're doing really good down here, man. Why don't you come down and art direct for the company, like we always talked about? Ooh, yeah, but Stu, as I had a daughter and a house to sell and stuff like that. I was like, dude, it's and I was working like 7 different jobs at the time, so go down to doing one job. That was kind of, it seemed a little tough. But he's like, no, I'm telling you, when we talked and you said how much you would need, yeah, we can do that now. All right. And that was it. Moved down to Atlanta, and amazingly, I guess we never looked back at that point. Because as soon as I landed, I mean, they were knee deep in werewolf when I got there. What do we do with this? Okay, let's go. So yeah, it was amazing.
All right, cool. So I guess this brings us to our next question very nicely. What was art direction like in the early 90s when you first got there? And once you explain that, like, how is it kind of different nowadays?
Well, when I first got there, Joshua Gabriel Timbrook, who has done so many wonderful pieces of art for White Wolf, and especially in the early days, was doing the art direction, and he was so glad that I came down and started actually doing art direction because he really wanted to illustrate. So he was basically desperately trying to illustrate whatever he could, and then fill in with other illustrators that they would go to conventions and try to hook up with and stuff. There wasn't really a system or a way to do it that. And the aesthetic it bounced around a lot. So I think what I was able to do is to sort of bring that into a focus of what I was looking to have, the kind of visuals I was looking for. I also wanted to break us out of just kind of hiring folks we knew or folks that we saw in other games, and go completely onto people that we saw, particularly at the time in comic books, that we were all fans of various artists, and start reaching out to those guys and bringing them on board. And what I kind of discovered, which was interesting, was that there were like-minded art directors in 3 other companies in the gaming industry. You had Jesper Meerfors over at Wizards of the Coast. and Maria Cabardo at Mayfair, and Jeff Laubenstein at FASA. And of course, FASA was doing some phenomenal stuff with Shadowrun at that time. Mm-hmm. So we all kind of got into this situation where we realized we were all trying to do the same thing, which is bring in more and better and different kinds of artwork. And so we would just trade artists around. It was actually an incredibly positive experience all the way around. If I found an artist and this really wouldn't work for a vampire or a werewolf, but you know what, you would be great on Shadowrun. I'd give him Jeff's number and he'd give Jeff a call and start working there and different things like that. So that was kind of the thing. But I mean, we kind of established the process of working with the developers to get the notes to get to the artists ahead of time. Finding the right time to do that that wasn't too far out, because a lot of times things change, but wasn't last minute, which was the way things were pretty much all the time at White Wolf at the time. And so that was kind of it. And then kind of just my whole thing was, is this particular artist and their style appropriate for the project we're working on? Because what I like to do is let the artist create with as little of my being a puppet master to them versus being a guide to what we're trying to get. I want to hire someone because they have this particular style, then I'll work with them on the kind of scene we want to have depicted in terms of what details should be in it, stuff like that. But I don't want to be saying or being in the position of having to say, well, really you need to improve the drawing of the arm here and things like that. I mean, we want their style to come through. And in particular, as we were talking to guys who had started to, establish themselves in careers, I think that the kind of freedom we were able to offer versus maybe some of the, I don't want to call it nitpicking, because everybody has their reasons for, why they want a particular thing to look the way they do. But certainly, in my mind, the kind of micromanagement of the artist was something I wanted to try to avoid. And again, that's a fine line to walk too, because I've had artists who've just gone, no, really, I want you to tell me exactly what you want here. All right, then that's what we'll do. That's no problem. We can always tell you more details. Don't worry.
Right, absolutely.
So that was basically what I think the overall look was, and I think it was something that people appreciated about White Wolf art, is that they didn't necessarily. It wasn't just an illustration of the thing that was on the page next to it. There was something else going on there it was almost telling a visual story that, in a thematic way, because of the style and because of what these artists were choosing to depict, that was parallel to the information that was coming in and enhanced the information, but wasn't necessarily a reference illustration.
Okay.
Cool. So exactly, what is it like nowadays? Like, has it changed a lot, the entire process of art direction, or is it still kind of the same overall?
I'm trying to do it the same. I mean, and as the years went on, my direct art direction became a lot less common, and most of the time I was supervising a staff of art directors and trying to get everybody to create. And I wanted to have those guys have their freedom to art direct in a way that made sense to them, because they're really, everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses, and you want to push with the strengths. So now, as we've kind of come around to full circle, where I am doing a lot of the art directing again, I still find that the idea that you're out there trying to find high quality people and give them more freedom than they're used to still has a pretty valid approach to getting good art. Now, as opposed to back then when I was dealing with comic book people, now of course I'm dealing with talking to artists who are making names for themselves in concept art and other things for computer games. So it's just what they're doing has changed, and strangely enough, I've kind of come back around to I hope successfully art direct again.
Yeah, I was going to say, since obviously you now work with CCP, of course, and there's a hell of a lot of art coming out for the computer games. So does that mean you also have quite a lot of extra people that you can now, kind of network through and find pieces that you would not have imagined you could have grabbed before, or maybe the art. I'm just trying to get a feel because there's like artwork, of course, has changed a lot because you now have the prevalence of computer aided
digital work, sure.
Yeah, and so because like a friend of mine who used to be in my great gaming group, she's a digital artist for like what's she doing right now? I think she's done a few various things like UI design for various companies and so forth.
Right.
And so and the stuff she's drawn just for our gaming groups like completely like wow. And it's been interesting to see from like early Vampire all the way up to like say Victorian Age Lost, just how art has evolved and changed, and it's it's exciting. So I'm sure like so what's it like working with then? I guess what I'm saying is what's it like working with CCP and kind of like the art you have access through them, or what kind of art do you get through them?
Well, I mean, right now nothing. Now, the MMO, whatever work is being done on the MMO, and and it's one of those. I'm going to skirt around certain subjects as we talk.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
And I think we went through this a little bit with the roundtable we did last month. So, the MMO is a completely self-contained entity. What's going on with White Wolf and the projects that we're working on right now, self-contained entities. The one thing I do have is I have the advantage of now I've gotten to know a whole lot of concept artists for computer games from being involved with both just being involved with CCP, but also being involved in that industry for which I was doing for about 3 years up until last year, up until V20. And so I think I understand these guys pretty well, and it's very exciting to see so much beautiful work that's out there, and to try to, in the same way that it was the same way when I was trying to pull in comic book artists way back in the day, it's the same sort of thing. Oh, I just saw this amazing piece. Oh, who's that guy? I'm gonna look him up, and it's so much easier to do that now. I mean, it's one of the things Justin and I keep talking about when we talk about the open development process, how amazing it is to be able to get immediate feedback from the fans on anything we post. I mean, God, when we started out, the only way we knew what people thought about stuff was were they buying it or not. Every once in a while, somebody would send us a letter. Yeah. If we didn't go to conventions, we would never have heard anything from the fans directly. So now to be able to say, oh, there's this really great guy on this. Oh yeah, send me his website. Oh yeah, okay. Just boom, boom. Hey dude, you want to work on this thing? Boom, boom. Really amazing immediacy of all that. And so I think that's one of the things that's really changed, very much for the better, all the way around. But no, I can't actually access anything that they're doing for the MMO for anything that we're doing with these books, and I don't think we should either. I mean, there's an aesthetic and there's a way to do art for tabletop gaming, for paper electronic, sort of products that I think is the. You need to provide a bit of a wider range of style and aesthetic, so that you pull in more people's interest. Because not no one can. If we put up 10 artists, I guarantee you, no one would agree who were the top 3. Because everybody's got their own taste, and what hits you, what gets you excited about something, is always going to be different. Somebody wrote in about Mummy, demanding that we make sure that John Cobb does art for Mummy. And John, if you remember his work from many years ago, is very, very twisted, very idiosyncratic, and I consider very much an artist in the truest sense of the word, in that he has images and pieces of images and little squiggles that mean important things to him in his art, that I have no clue what they mean. They're there and they're strange, but they show up time and time again through different pieces through the years, and so it's obvious that there's an imagery that goes on that's important to him. But also a lot of people, I mean, he's one of the ones that people complain about as well, because it doesn't look like anything, and it's all weird, and his vampire's fingers are 18 inches long, and it's all and that one had a wang, and yet. Here's this guy who absolutely says that the piece that John Cobb did in one of the first or the second edition Mummies encapsulated that game for him and made him love it. So, when you're doing computer games, you're doing anything where you're trying to present a singular world look. I mean, having worked with Blizzard on the World of Warcraft tabletop, this was something we ran into with them as well. Is they've got a look. Any game that has created a setting in a world has a very strong look, and you can't just have guys doing 5 different styles of art that illustrates that look. Because they're not getting that look anymore. They're doing something else. So it's very, very different. I think keeping them in 2 separate places is the smartest thing we could possibly do.
I was going to say contrast with that then, because as you say, you draw in quite a lot of different artists for a particular project. How does that contrast, say, for Mage the Awakening? Because that's that
was an experiment.
Through and through, yeah. It'd be interesting. How did that contrast then, or what did you learn from that, as you say, experiment?
I think I mean, to be very honest, I don't think that I would ever do a single artist on a book that size again. Certainly not a core rule book. I think a core has to speak to a lot of different people in a lot of different ways, and you can have like I said, you can have an appropriate kind of artwork that is right for it. But I think you need within that appropriateness, I think you have to keep it a little bit open, a little bit wider, so that people can access it from a lot of different comfort levels. And this is the kind of thing that really gets me excited. Okay, cool. Whereas I still think that having a single artist on an individual project that's smaller or more tightly themed or focused still is a really strong and cool way to go. I absolutely loved probably 90% of the pieces that Mike Kaluta did for the Mage the Awakening book. I just loved. I mean, and the decorative elements that all tie together with the visuals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I just absolutely love it. But I know that there's a lot of people who were completely flipped out at some of the depictions and some of his stylistic choices. And, everything to calling this, who's this hack you got in here? Was he somebody's relative? No, he's a man who's done 40 years of legendary work in the comic book industry. But they weren't into pen and ink drawings, or they weren't into his particular style. So it went flat. And so we lost them from real engagement with Mage, which is very, very unfortunate. That's why I'm saying I wouldn't do that on a core book again.
Because I really like that book because of all the art all the way through it by one artist. And it was very much the feeling of it. Maybe almost like if it was a tome of words. Yeah, it's
exactly.
written by one person, and I love that. That's a really strong thing.
That was the feel that I was going for with the whole, the layout and the design of it as well, is to kind of give this feeling that this was a, boom, look at this, and it's all consistent, almost, as if someone had sat down and tried to do the secret history of the world, But not everyone loved it.
Rich, I think you've been kind of hinting at this, but Beckett asked kind of what you look for in White Wolf art, right, and what sort of pieces speak to you.
Well, I think there's two ways to look at that. One is, what am I looking at as an art director or a creative director for White Wolf's products, and then what pieces speak to me personally. So I think that knowing that you've got to look at the larger picture, and this is where, again, this sort of appropriateness that I kind of drummed into my art directors and designers over the years, where that comes in really important, because again, there are certainly artists that I absolutely love, and I would love to see illustrate certain of our projects, and I just know that they would not be right for it. Other times, you get an artist that you really love, and you get a project that just they fit like a glove to, and that's one of the greatest art direction moments ever, because you get to work with somebody you've always admired, and then, hey, you want to do this thing? Yeah, it's pretty cool. So when I'm looking at for White Wolf things. Obviously looking at technical proficiency, we're looking at the ability to do something on a technical level that has skill and proficiency and beauty to it. And then at the same time, what is it expressing? Sometimes it's expressing a story. Sometimes it's expressing a mood, but it has to express something. If it's just a shot. It again, it doesn't get us going. That's one of the things we used to say to the illustrators who come up with their portfolios at conventions, and most of the work that we saw, other than the furry porn, was single character, no background. Look, I can draw this guy. Maybe it was somebody from their their various games that they were playing. Maybe just they were inspired by somebody they had read about, or it was just the very first thing that they were doing just these characters. And we would always say, so what? What's the story behind this? Well, and they would have this story. None of it was in the art, and so it was like, well, get that in there. Establish something about this person. They've had this tragic life. Well, they're just kind of staring at us blankly. They don't feel tragic. How can you make them feel tragic? So that's one of the big things that we look for when we're putting this stuff together is telling that story, establishing some kind of mood. If you can tell a story and establish mood and really grab you and be technically proficient, then you're one of our best guys, and we'll probably give you far too much work and burn you out. But so that's basically on the art direction professional, and that's what we try to go for. Like for me, I mean, I'm pretty eclectic visually, so there's a lot of different ways that I'll look at a piece and go, oh, that is amazing. But I was always a gigantic fan of Brahm. When he was working for, I guess he started working for TSR, and then he started working for when WotC bought them. He stayed along, or he got involved with them again, or something. I forget. So I was a fan of his work, but the ability to actually then work with him on, I think it was the Wraith Atlanta cover, I think was the first thing he did for us. That was just an amazing moment. So, as an example of artist and material, being able to bring them together, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Didn't Brahm do the splat portraits in Vampire the Requiem? Is that correct?
No, I don't think he did, but I will dig it up.
All right, let's see if I can beat you there.
Yeah. Well, actually, no, you know what? It sure is looking. I believe you could be correct, my friend. Yep, very good.
Nice. And we'll put links to a lot of the images that we talk about in the show notes of this episode. I think they'll really help enhance exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, well, yeah. It tends to be a lot of referencing to visuals when I'm talking about this stuff.
So Rich.
Yes.
Recently, we've had a lot of new technology coming out, like tablets and iPhones. So
Absolutely.
Beckett wanted to know how that's really affected the graphic development or art direction, or really just like PDFs in general that White Wolf's been using so much lately.
I think the first thing that we needed to do is we needed to move to accessibility on electronic media, and the PDF format was the most accessible way for us to go at that. We were already creating PDFs to send to the traditional printers to actually do their files from. So working from PDFs made a lot of sense. As we've been seeing with some of our recent ones, particularly as I think the iPad 2, as it crunches its numbers, doesn't necessarily always play well with straight up PDF code, I guess. And so we're going to need to continue to evolve what we're doing there as well. I don't think we've scratched the surface of what could be done with games and tablets. I think there's some people there who are taking some stabs and trying some things, but I really like to see much more. I hesitate to call it this because it brings up a whole kettle of fish, but I think the idea of Gamebook as app has a lot of importance to it right now, and I really am very interested in the next couple of years seeing what we can do to move more in that general direction. really start taking advantage of some of the amazing things that tablets and the iPhone can do. As you're sitting around the table, or even as you're just relaxing and enjoying the game and reading about it and being immersed in that environment. I think there's just so much more that can be done. But it's not part of traditionally how you make a book, so it's something that has to be shifted to, evolve to, and I think it's why a lot of traditional paper RPG creators still haven't jumped that far into it either. They're kind of fine tuning how to make really nice PDFs right now.
Yeah,
and I know we're doing the same thing.
Yeah, because like with the PDFs, I mean, PDF is still just is still a digital replication of the traditional book format. Yeah, the page, and obviously, I mean, in a few more in more recent products that have been put out, you have like hyperlinks in there, and just to make navigation or to go to external web pages, because of course, hopefully someone is looking at this on their computer, and that's really great. But I think, the idea of the movement away from it, as you said, the idea of a game book as an app is a cool kind of idea there.
We talk a lot about it, and obviously the reason why we moved away from traditional paper RPG publishing is because the market was becoming very unstable and was lessening. But looking at what was traditional there, and looking at the incredible changes on all levels of publishing that have occurred, even in the past 2 years, never mind the last 5 years, the last 10 years. What it means to publish really has changed, and I feel good that we were an early adopter on trying to move into more electronic levels of publishing, even though I know that hurt a lot of people who really wanted us to continue until forever, doing the classic getting books made and getting the books into stores, getting the books on Amazon, so they could buy them the way they always have. That it wasn't sustainable, and I think a lot of companies have found that. Now we do things like with the Kickstarters, where we can do a very limited run of a deluxe book, and make sure that people still get the big booky book that they love so much, and I love so much. I totally understand where they're coming from. In fact, I was just talking to Rich Dansky last night. He happened to be in my neck of the woods, and we had dinner, talking about because I do so much reading of PDFs and books that I'm looking at on a professional level, I still would rather have a book in my hand I could turn the pages of when I want to relax and enjoy myself. I think a lot of people still have that, oh, here's my book. Because that was what we grew up on. But if we want to have any kind of growth in this industry at all, we've got to appeal to people in the manner in which they're getting information. And so much more of our information comes through, anything you want to have connected to the internet. That we just have to look at that and say, when I started at White Wolf, we didn't have email.
Wow.
There was not email then. So we have moved forward in so many different ways, even in that time period. So I just think there's so much more that can be done with how we present games, how people absorb them and get immersed in them, and I just think of how interesting some of our old books would have been if we had just included mood music while you're playing. So you're sitting there and you're watching, you press the button, and you listen to the music while if Justin's obviously we couldn't have afforded probably all the ASCAP rights, but if Justin could have done a playlist for each book for Masquerade in those last couple of years, how cool that would have been, So
but then I can imagine like the idea to have like more and more embedded media in these things would be just great. I think I've read somewhere the idea of even having you have the rules as they're laid out, as they're written, but then also kind of some form of I don't know, kind of embedded Java app that animates the whole process, so you can see it in a tangible way that makes sense, and that would be really cool. Yeah. Or even having like a dice app that's built in, or that's
Absolutely.
kind of craziness. Yeah.
No, that's something I've been looking at that for the last 2 years. I just haven't been able to pull that one together, but absolutely.
I mean, the one thing I would really love to see is because I mean a game which I've seen a really really nice app done for. So Warhammer, what is it? 3rd edition roleplay by Fantasy Flight. It's a very component heavy game because they're very good at making components, but they have an excellent iPhone app to do all your character management, and it takes what is a jumble of pieces in front of you in a sheet and things to like connect together and puts it right in your hand. And
that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
And it would be great to see. Yeah, I would love to see something like that for like Vampire or something, because even for a player it's great, but as a GM or as a storyteller it'd be amazing, because you could literally flick through all your NPCs and they're just there. And if you could then attach a picture, because I think it was on the latest Darklink, we were talking about using pictures to help visualize characters. And if you could just, you could grab a picture from the web and just go, that's the face of this NPC, and you could share it to everyone. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. You're definitely going down the exact same path I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I'm almost this close to like trying to work out some time to just sit down with Android and write something at some point. But I do enough programming for my day job.
That's one of the real problems with it is, how much effort can folks who do that sort of thing do to jump in on something, as a hobby when they're doing it for their job.
Yeah, well, the programming, for me, it'd be learning an entire new language. I program in archaic languages. I program in languages that make normal, modern computer like people just cringe. So that's what you get for my line of work. Anyway. So is that everything, Mike, on iPhone and tablets and transmedia? I guess that's the buzzword for this type of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess. Sounds like good stuff. Sounds like a good tie-in, which brings us to the next question. So Werewolf had, collectible card game, temporary tattoos, Mage had a cool tarot deck, Changeling had cantrip cards, Vampire had a wrestler. So what tie-in for the World of Darkness do you think was like best and most effective for the brand, Rich?
I don't know. The weird thing about that was we never really had direct relationships that could actually be pointed at. Certainly, the Mage Tarot was just it was another product. I mean, we just saw it as another product, and it was just something we really wanted to do, and we thought it was right and appropriate to do for it. Any of the Werewolf Wild West poker deck and things like that. I mean, those were just things like the wrestler and stuff like that. I mean, I think that those sort of mentions that get out into the mass media don't do so much to draw. Like, I don't think we got a Vampire player, and if anybody out there can contradict me, that would be awesome. I don't think we got somebody playing Vampire because they went and they saw, there's this wrestler and he's pretty cool. And somebody said, no, wait, that's the name of one of the clans. What? I don't necessarily think that we got something like that. But what I think it did do was it for our fans, it was just one more thing that was cool about the thing that they loved that we were doing. So those sorts of things, I think, work on that level versus what's something that could really be effective. It's more of a zeitgeist sort of thing. I mean, probably if we looked at anything, Kindred the Embraced theoretically should have done the best thing for us. I mean, that reached millions of people. And I still have people coming in and talk about, oh yeah, and I remember seeing that one show. What was that called again? But they remember it was about vampires, and if they know anything about us, they know it was connected to us. But, so I think probably from what I've heard, the two vampire computer games actually
Oh, definitely. Yeah,
fed
yeah.
into people getting involved with the RPGs, the paper RPGs.
Actually, I think I'm one of those because I picked up Redemption way back in the day.
Now, Bloodlines has been, I mean, and there are guys who are working on the MMO project who are that was their introduction to what were products, and then they got involved with the world and the paper RPGs through that. Vampire: The Eternal Struggle, another one which reached to a whole different kind of person who then where a lot of VTES players, that's what they do. They're not interested in the tabletop gaming, but there's others who are.
Yeah.
Similarly,
a friend of mine. I was going to say
Yeah.
a friend of mine got into Vampire through the computer games,
Right.
and to put it to establish like how much he's into it. He now also has on his shoulder the classic Vampire the Masquerade Ankh symbol emblazoned on
Right.
his skin for eternity, because
For
that's how much he was
eternity.
drawn into it. So
and that was that one always kills me. Because I've over the years we've gotten plenty of photos of people's tattoos and things that
Yeah.
were inspired. And anytime it's one of the symbols that I designed, which was most of the clan symbols and tribe symbols and all that stuff. It's just a weird experience to see the thing you came up with burned into someone's skin. Oh man, yeah. Well, I can only be flattered.
You know which souls you owe to you at the end of days. Then you go mine.
Army of
just
Darkness,
harvest
come to
them
me.
Yeah.
So yeah. No, I mean we got nibbled at, I guess is the way it goes on in Hollywood. I mean, I would have loved to have seen a movie. I think probably I would more love to see movies now where you could actually do justice to the world. But yeah, I think that was probably the only thing we aspire. I mean, we got a TV show, for crying out loud. I mean, I'm not talking about the quality of it, but we got one. So yeah, I would have enjoyed a movie, I think. And
I mean, it wouldn't be in my mind. It wouldn't be crazy to see something like a TV series again, if that was ever possible. Because I mean, they're still talking about a World of Warcraft film, aren't they? And you
Right.
see how computer games are transitioning into just general media. So, if anything, it's almost like society's kind of gone, oh, this is a geeky thing. Let's have it as a film or TV series and run with it. I mean, I would love to see that happen, because reading the news that they're almost thinking about, was it Lionsgate thinking about rebooting Twilight after the last film comes out? It just makes me.
I think
just
that was
why?
an internet rumor.
Yeah, I hope it is. That would be just madness. But yeah, it'd be cool to see what happens, obviously, after the MMO hits, because it's going to be an entire new generation, I hope. That's just going to be tagged and bagged.
That has always been the plan, yep.
Awesome. Good stuff. So we're starting to run out of time here, and I definitely want to talk about Wraith a bit, because this is going to be the last episode of Season 3 of Dark Days Radio, and of course we always end with a Wraith episode. And thank you very much to Vergast for giving us quite a few very good Wraith questions to pass along to Rich. So first question from Vergast is, much of the art in Wraith always seemed to be much more surreal than other game lines, and was that intentional, and kind of where was your head with that?
Well, I think, I mean, again, it's consider the world we were depicting, right? It was very clear from the first discussions with the writers that this was a mirror universe that went along with what we would call our real world, where the vampires hung out. And so how do you depict the world of death? And even the book, was it Face of Death or Faces of Death? Whichever one was the book that we did, that came out, the art book that came out with Wraith, or around the same time that Wraith came out. Going into that and making sure that had an otherworldly quality to it was very important. So yeah, it was absolutely intentional. The artists we hired for that, of course, were the guys that we thought could bring that sort of stuff off. And you guys mentioned it right afterwards. Two of those guys, Drew Tucker and John Cobb, who were absolutely essential to creating that kind of surrealness to it, or kind of disturbing art quality to it.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I went through some Wraith books just before, and I noticed that from the ones that I had, Drew Tucker actually didn't do all that much, which I was kind of surprised by. The few pieces that he did do definitely stand out.
Right.
And speaking of surreal art, definitely Drew Tucker does that, and John Cobb's stuff is always just really weird. So really, they have very different styles, and you might think they're almost conflicting. So how would you handle that as an art director or during production of a book?
I think you try to put them on in areas where that particular style is the way you want to depict what you're depicting. I mean, you can see like with John's work that regular scenes weren't necessarily the coolest place to put his stuff, although he did a lot of very cool ones. But his work could also give it almost a graphic feel. You could take his work and play with it and create graphics based on what he was creating, which kind of so his work would kind of bridge certain levels of the visuals that also tied into the arcanoi symbols and things like that, and the borders and things. And then, when you have more of a painterly sort of style, then you've drawn the one line there. Now, all the artists that are between those two styles, you want to create a continuity between, let's say, we'll just use the two examples, Drew and John, and have artists who fall within that range, so that there's not a huge gap. There's very appropriate and very different upticks all the way along that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got you. So also commenting on the art of Wraith. About a year ago, we had Sam Chupp on the show, and he was talking about, he called the cover of Wraith the Mask of Charon, and I probably should have asked him about it like right then and there, but I didn't. So now we're asking you, Rich, is the cover actually supposed to represent more than just some chains and a lock?
Well, it's interesting because I think there's two things going on there, and I can't speak for what Sam is remembering, but actually that book that I was just mentioning, the art book that came out with Wraith, I'll try to see if I have that on my shelf. And wait a minute, because it has to run in sideways. The Face of Death, yes, the cover of the Face of Death is the Mask of Charon.
Okay.
Now, what I believe went on, because what happened with the original Wraith cover was we got the initial piece. This was all a sculpture created by Henry Higginbotham, who years later, or several years later, would go on to do all the covers for the Dungeons and Dragons 3rd editions, the Player's Guide, the Dungeon Master's Guide, all that, the sculptural pieces that they used for those covers. So we did it first. Henry created this thing, and I don't remember if it incorporated some of the Mask of Charon or not. My memory of it was that it didn't, but it's possible. But we looked at it, we put the logo on top of it, we looked at it, we said, this is it isn't working. And Mark actually was the one who said, you know what, we need to have some more chains on this. Okay. And so Henry sent me a thing, and I was looking at it, and even without talking to the other guys, I said, you know what, Henry, go crazy on the chains. Go absolutely nuts on the chains. It's a very strong metaphor in the game, the game world itself. Just go nuts on it. And so that's what he eventually came up with, that we used. So it's possible under those chains is some of the Mask of Charon. So I don't want to contradict Sam there.
Okay.
But it went from the thing that was there, and the chains were kind of an added motif, to the chains are the motif, and get that lock in there. Because the lock was like off to one side and stuff, and then, we centered it.
Yeah, and the middle of the lock actually glowed in the dark, along with the actual Wraith title.
Yep.
Which is definitely pretty cool. Was that your idea or someone else?
Oh yeah, any of those gimmicks that were on the original covers, entirely my fault. I was. It all started. It started with Werewolf. We've been trying to figure out how we want to do the cover for Werewolf. How are we going to do this thing, and how do we get the metaphor of werewolf across? That because otherwise they're just the Lon Chaney's werewolves or werewolves of London. But we were talking about warriors of Gaia. We were talking about doomed, magnificent, epic storied heroes, if you will, or at least anti-heroes. And how do you get that feeling that there's something else besides just a thing? And I was at a comic book store with Stu Wick, and it was just when they started doing funky covers on comics, and somebody had done a slash through the front cover of an X-Men because Wolverine was on the other side. and they did a die cut, snicked. Whoosh, and I looked at it, I was looking at it, hey, Stu, what if we slash through the front cover of Werewolf? Can we do that? I think it could be really cool. And then we, as we talked about it, we said, this is actually expressing what we're trying to express with this thing. So once we did that one, then it was like, what can we do for Mage? And we wanted to do a hologram tarot card. But the hologram technology was only just getting started. So that's why we knew about it. And there wasn't really both the time, they had to send it off to labs and get things. I think we had to get a sculpture done of the Dante character and stuff, and we just we couldn't do it. And then once we actually looked at the price of what it would cost to do that thing, but we want to do a tarot card. Yeah, we love that. Well, let's go with some foil. Okay, we haven't done that foil embossed. That'd be really cool. So then we get to Wraith, and it's like, well, we were playing up this whole thing. What are you afraid of in the dark? Don't run home to mama. I mean, all that sort of stuff. Well, I remembered when I was a kid, I painted glow-in-the-dark stars and things in my room. Also a couple of crosses just to keep the vampires away. And I was like, hey, if in the dark, scary things, you gotta have some sort of. So we did the glow-in-the-dark thing for that, and then Changeling. I think we did the. Actually, that whole stained glass sculpture was made, and then photographed. So.
Oh, really?
And then it was full color, of course, throughout the book. So that was our big woohoo! Look at this.
Yeah, and the spine art on the side.
Right, and then
of the, books,
the continuing spine thing that we never finished, which I always felt bad about. But I mean, we would had to have done another 50 books, I think, to get the whole. It was a long piece. It was a really long piece.
So, Rich, beyond just like the art and production, what kind of influence did you have on Wraith? Even if it's just like lunchtime discussions and that kind of stuff. Like, what do you really remember from the development?
We were very much, a game studio at that point, and people were mostly involved on their own phase of the project. But because we discovered that it really worked out better if everybody got together ahead of time, and while things were being worked on, we actually discussed what was going on and things with it. I was, I won't make any claims for having made, any substantive contribution to the writing of it, but we did discuss things and talk about where things were, and is this going the right way? And that kind of there was definitely a sweet spot at White Wolf where that process worked really well to get a whole bunch of people to talk about it together. It got bigger and bigger. That I think it kind of got unwieldy and a little broken down, but during the time that Wraith was being made. It was very much Mark and Sam coming up with a lot of the ideas. They have Josh sitting there doing sketches, and I'd pop in to find out how things were going with it and where things were. And of course, because we had to get art ahead of time, and like with the cover, we had to get the cover way ahead of time. As they would come up with their newest ideas, they'd throw them past us. A lot of walks in graveyards. There was a graveyard down the street that they got a lot of inspiration for, and every once in a while they'd be, "Hey, come on, walk in the graveyard with us. We'll tell you what's going on." Okay, cool. And it was good that way. It was a nice, had the involvement. You could, if you were really into a project, you could be more and more involved with it because they were always glad to have somebody sitting down and talking with them, and vice versa. We used to talk a lot about then how the visuals would come together for those things. So. I think So I mean, in terms of influence on Wraith, it would be the fact that how the visuals kind of work together with what the writers had come up with. The Arcanoi symbols obviously were a big part of that.
Good stuff.
Yep.
So now we're going to move on to much broader Q&A segment with a lot of listener questions. And Rich, the first one comes from this fellow Lost_heretic.
Some kind of strange weirdo lurks the airwaves.
Right. Yeah. So he asks, if Eddie Webb is Mr. White Wolf, does that make Rich Mrs. White Wolf?
Well, to begin with, I'm not 100% sure Eddie's Mr. White Wolf. Eddie's really. I mean, he's. I'm glad. I would be glad if anybody thinking of Eddie that way, because Eddie did a amazing job, particularly when a lot of us were trying to find our way with how we were inner working with the MMO and things like that. Eddie really took the torch and held it high for several years. Almost, I don't want to say single-handedly, but certainly he was an amazing, representative or face for White Wolf for that time, because he's a great guy and he's incredibly nice. But he's also very, very dedicated to the best quality White Wolf products we could possibly make. So he was just absolutely great to work with, and still is great to work with. I still talk to Eddie once a week. As anybody who should know that we try to post our Monday lunch meeting notes every week, so you can find out what's going on with White Wolf and me and Eddie. Mm-hmm. So that's my but I'm not 100% sure he's Mr. White Wolf. And if he is Mr. White Wolf, then I'm certainly not Mrs. White Wolf. Our relationship is somewhat different than that. I might be Mr. White Wolf's uncle who comes around and maybe stays a little too long on his couch, but
okay, all right, sounds good. Sounds good.
Remember, I hired Eddie, so I think he's great.
All right, good stuff. Beckett asks, why is there such a deficiency in zombie apocalypses at White Wolf?
We touched on zombies a fair bit in Hunter of the Reckoning. I mean, there was a fair bit of zombie stuff going on there, mm-hmm. And then in recent years, as we turned into a zombie apocalypse country, it's also around the same time that we were limiting the sort of things that we've been publishing. So I just think we haven't found a zombie thing that has called out to us particularly. We have tossed a zombie, new zombie game for the New World of Darkness out probably every year that we've talked about it. Since back in, I want to say yes, at one point I believe there was a matching Hunter. For Hunter the Lost, there was a Hunter zombie concept that was playing. We were playing around with kind of putting out two games that would fight off each other.
Okay.
But then I'm sorry, not Hunter the Lost. It's changing the Lost. Hunter the Vigil.
Yeah. Hunter the Vigil. That's pretty interesting because Mike Lee has said that originally Demon the Fallen was a supplement for Hunter the Reckoning. And just kind of expanded into its own game line, which is pretty interesting. That you guys were kind of thinking of doing the same thing with Hunter the Vigil. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, because that's really what happens is ideas are thrown around and played around with, and sometimes they're somebody will come out of left field with an idea that you just go, whoa, yes, that's what we need. Changing the Lost was one of those. I love Ethan Skemp and I've been a big supporter of his work, and I love what he does, and also I play a couple of his D&D games, so I
cool
the way he thinks. But I had never read his passion more than his pitch for Changing the Lost. It was an amazing pitch, and with that, it was just like any other ideas we might have had for it. There was a couple, I think, a couple other people had some changing ideas that we kind of incorporated in because they fit so well with the main thrust of what Ethan was trying to do. And we just had the same experience for the game we're looking at for 2013. When I was getting pitched for it, I started getting the same. Wow, that is such a great way to look at this particular supernatural. This is really, really going to, yeah. I can see how this is going to be cool. And when you can get people excited about it that way, it's always a great sign. So, other times, you people pitch stuff and it's like, yeah, this is okay, this is kind of good, and then something else pops up and you go, okay, let's go in that direction. I think that's what happened with Vigil, is the whole dual zombie thing kind of got winnowed away to be much more of a focus on how could we make it work so that if you were a Hunter the Reckoning fan, if you were a Hunter's Hunted fan, if you were a Call of Cthulhu fan, if you were a Scooby-Doo fan, all being hunters, how could we really stretch the toolbox concept so that, like with Vigil, you could play any of those those tropes using Vigil, and so we kind of, rather than worrying about what they were going to be fighting in a whole other game, let's really, really narrow and focus in on, and as Mike Tinney would say, drill down on the what it is to be a hunter in the World of Darkness.
Good stuff. So I heard that correctly. You said new game in 2013.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Oh yeah.
Outstanding. You heard it here first, folks. New game, New World of Darkness, 2013.
Yeah, we've got Mummy this year, and then we're already putting together what we're doing for next year.
Awesome. Sounds really good. So we just mentioned Demon and Hunter. Are there any new plans for new products with that? This was asked by Echo Doken. And a lot of people are pretty excited with CWOD coming back.
Right.
Wondering if their game line is gonna get any love.
I don't have any plans for them specifically right now, but I'm always open to hearing ideas for those sorts of things. I don't really think Reckoning really needs new products in terms of being a complete and total game line that rolls along. There might be some corners of that particular part of the setting that we could look into a little bit more. I think Demon probably there's probably a good couple of additional books that we could have done back in the day, even and with Gehenna and Apocalypse and everything occurring. I don't think Demon was cut short, but I think it could have gone on for a little longer. And it's like one of those things. Is it better to have a game that goes out on a high point than kind of gets into the supplement treadmill and what do we talk about now? Hey, how about all the Demon-owned bars? Yeah, that'd be a good one. Okay. Nothing on the schedule right now, but certainly not an impossibility.
Yeah, and that's a good point about Hunter. It really, all the different monster types are basically covered. There's even a book about making your own. So a lot of books about different creeds and all that. So I guess it was pretty much closing down, I'd say. Really, there was just a story that was still going.
Right.
Which, I don't know, it could have been moved to novels or something. Good point. Cool. So speaking of Hunter, there's a thread over on Shadow Essence about what would people want if Hunter had a 20th anniversary.
Right.
And one of the things that came up was kind of the artwork. Not that it's bad. It's just that, in fact, a lot of it's really, really high quality, especially the Ron Spencer splat portraits and that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of very super heroic, action-packed scenes in the core book, which don't really fit with some of the words that were written.
Actually, I think I once counted them, and there's 12. There's 12 pieces that are, the driving the spoon through the guy's head, and things like that are over the top action shots. I was actually asked about this at one point by Steve Wick, and I was like, no, there's only this many. It isn't actually the whole book. The whole book is not asynchronous with each other, but there are pieces that. So if we're looking, when we're talking about appropriateness, we're talking about tonality. If during the process we had a range from, let's say, 5 through 15 was what we were originally aiming towards, and some of the art pieces went closer to 15, and then the tonality of the writing shifted from 1 to 10, those pieces feel that they're no longer illustrating the same thing. And that's essentially what happened. I mean, some of the, if you look at some of the promo shots that we did there of the cheerleader type Hunter and the almost badass leather clad Hunter dude. If you look in the there's a suggestion of angel wings coming from behind that guy, because that was much more of an involved part of that story. That the battle between good and evil and the messengers being much more overtly angelic was a lot more what was being discussed earlier in Hunter's creation.
Okay.
So
No, it's
it,
very
it
interesting.
it definitely did. There was definitely a tonal shift that occurred in the Hunter property as it was being developed and worked on and written.
I mean, that sort of shift, I mean, is quite kind of because I mean, I think the most obvious shift I've ever seen in something like that is when you compare what for Exalted when the original art came in for that, and that
Right.
one turns up in the Storyteller Companion,
Right.
and then because there was that sudden shift from the traditional kind of work you would get into the Udon style and full blown anime style, and yeah, the artwork. I mean, the classic example of artwork of a shift like that is there's a picture which is a guy on horseback running from some sort of I want to say T-Rex type creature, and there's the exact same piece in a more Eastern kind of
Right.
classic anime style, and yeah, it does change the tone of the book completely.
Right.
Yeah.
And in that case, in the case of Exalted, of course, that was what we were aiming towards.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Yeah.
the writing had been made with the idea that however we wanted to depict it, it would be appropriate, and if we could go towards more manga and anime style, that was how we wanted to sort of wrap all that lovely writing up in, but we weren't able to find enough.
Yeah.
Guys, again, this was before you had deviant art. I mean, we couldn't just go on and search it, so we were just having the hardest time. And by sheer serendipity, was it Udon who reached out to us, or the other guy?
I think it's Udon. I'm sure Udon did quite a lot. I mean,
There was another studio that we also got involved with, who was a bunch of artists who could do more work in that style. And so, yeah, I mean that was, and I'm glad you liked the idea of the two pieces that you could compare and contrast, because it's definitely a
yeah, I mean,
a deliberate shift, at that point.
I mean, it's interesting because I mean, for me, I mean, the two. I mean, when you see things depicting the same sort of scene, I mean, the tonal
Right.
shift, as I said, it's because I try and when I'm running Exalted, I try and push it more towards the kind of rather than going with the classic kind of epic high fantasy, is to make it more dark and gritty, so that all the epic stuff is even more epic. I think
Right.
my base level is something kind of more towards Escaflowne rather than say Final Fantasy. But,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
Yeah,
and again, and we wanted to present that range, and that was, I think, something that Exalted One did very well. Even with that sort of like, okay, we're going to pull these pieces out, we're going to put these pieces in. The pieces we left in, I think, enabled, because I really was concerned about losing traditional fantasy gamers' interest, that they would just look at it and go, "Oh, it's a manga book. I don't care." I mean, because I don't know if you guys remember back at that time, but there was definitely a schism, and I still see it sometimes on RPG Net, where I won't even touch it up because I won't touch it because it's got all that Japamation in it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have a nice range in there, but we had gotten very little actual, anime or manga influence work. So to be able to get those guys on board and do the cover and stuff like that, that was a huge step in the direction we wanted to go in.
Very interesting. So Rich, what's your thoughts on the art direction of W20? I'm not even sure if I'm sure you've sent out for actually we know because we've seen plenty of pieces from Ron Spencer and
Steve Prescott.
Steve Prescott, yes. So what are you thinking with the art direction for that? And a question I had also was that because you can now do lots of full color artwork, are you thinking about grabbing any like small pieces from Rage, maybe putting those in, maybe to go along with the different gifts and that kind of stuff?
I think actually that's a really interesting question. I had not considered pulling from Rage only because the philosophy that I did for V20 and also for Werewolf 20 on the art direction end is to try to stay very much to a core visual experience that people had in terms of both the artists we picked and the kind of things we're depicting. When they picked up the core, the first, the 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and revised core books, what was it that people got into their heads on a visual level that kind of, I know the impact that these books had now that I've talked to a lot of the fans, and I don't want to put in stuff outside of that experience. So in terms of Werewolf 20, what I really try to do is pull in the artists that that I felt really represented werewolf, particularly in if I wanted to average it out, I'd say in the second edition mode.
Okay.
So just to give you an idea, there's going to be work. You've already seen Spencer and Prescott's. Dan Brereton, Drew Tucker is back with some pieces. Brian Wackwitz which was an artist we used way early in Werewolf 1. Richard Kane Ferguson. Jeff Rebner, who did tons and tons of pieces for Werewolf. John Bridges. Steve Ellis. Brian LeBlanc. Jeff Holt, who did an enormous number of pieces for Werewolf, but spread throughout the books. And then I do have John Cobb coming back, which I was so thrilled because I tried to find him for Vampire 20. I tried him all over the place and I could not find him anywhere. And I should have just looked under John Cobb art on Facebook. Because that's where he was. I never knew it. So, yeah, it was to being able to work with those guys again. This is one of my favorite parts of working on the 20th anniversary books. Just hanging out on the phone, talking to these guys I haven't talked to. Some of these guys I haven't talked to in 10 or 15 years. It's really been wonderful. So to get their work, and what I'm trying to do is present their work as they're doing it now. I'm not asking them to go back and recreate what they did back in the day, because we're also going to pull, like we did for V20, we're going to pull classic pieces from those 3 core books and reproduce them, so that as you're going through it, it's like seeing an old friend. Like, oh my, I remember that piece. So yeah, we got a lot of just incredibly positive feedback for that for V20. So that's at least for W20, and if we do a Mage 20, I think that philosophy is what's going to carry us through.
Right. Right. The next question we've got is from La Sombra, who I was talking to on Twitter. So I forwarded him to our posterous, and he gave us some good questions here. So Rich, something that was mentioned in a previous interview, and Mike says he can't remember exactly where, was that there'll be a new approach to New World of Darkness where you'll basically be kind of like distilling the best parts from certain books to lead towards like finally a new core book, which takes the best from what's being published. So kind of what route are you going with this? Or there's been rumours of Prejudice Taint maybe being removed, or...
What
can you tell us about
If I could find a way to get that out of there completely, I would, but we'll have to see.
Okay.
So
I have no issue with Prejudice Taint, really.
It's something that I always hammer Justin about because he's so vehemently for it and was for it when I questioned how it would be received when I first read the manuscript of the 17 proofs we did for Requiem. And he was very vehemently that this was an optional rule and it would be seen as an optional rule, and don't worry about it. It's very clear
it hasn't really been seen as an optional rule. And that's clear because we had David Hill on talk about it in Dance Macabre with the modifications to it and how you use it in different venues. And
which I had asked him to do for Dance Macabre just because. I felt and experience has shown that this was the truism for not everyone obviously, but for a fair number of folks who've come up to me, that they felt they were being told what their character would do in a situation that they didn't want to lose that control, and that's how it read to me. It felt like an authorial intent. This is how your vampire should behave, as opposed to, wouldn't it be cool if your vampire did this thing? And I think those are two very separate things when you're designing games, and particularly games where you're already dealing with an audience who didn't have to have this happen with their vampires. This disconnected for a bunch of the classic World of Darkness Masquerade fans. When they read that was far into their experience in Masquerade, and was one of the reasons they couldn't adapt to Requiem.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because there's a lot of really good stuff in Requiem that I think they would have enjoyed, but this just struck a really sour note. Despite the fact that you still, Frenzy and Rosttrek and all the other ways that you lose control.
Yeah.
But you could ride them, right? I mean, you could game them,
Yeah.
right? And Predator's Taint, no, by making it not part of the system, you couldn't game it, so it was really up to if your storyteller wanted to be a dick to you.
Yeah.
So, Anyway, that's my Predator's Taint rant. Sorry to go down that and waste your time on it, guys. I know we're running out of time. But I did want to say that one of the things that I'm really interested in is presenting for the New World of Darkness something along the lines that, and again, this is a very rough way to describe it. It is not the full intent. Something along the lines of taking an idea for how one person could do setting for, say, how they would do the New World of Darkness, just the blue books, just World of Darkness, and providing a chronicle in a very broad sense, not necessarily in the we're not doing a whole series of linked SASs, but in a very broad sense that says, if you did this particular kind of chronicle, you would use these rules, and this is why you would use these rules from all the books we've written about the World of Darkness up to this point, and kind of presenting, saying, almost like a default setting, but not in any way that we're saying, hey, this is Greyhawk, but more like, if this is something that's interesting to you, here's the whole thing laid out as a little bit. I think one of the things that happened with the New World of Darkness was we went to a whole bunch of people who were very, very used to getting their game world and their setting from us in a particular way, and we 180'd them and said, now you're going to get it this way. And for people who were already kind of thinking that way, they were able to make that leap pretty easily, and were willing to, because they were already thinking that way. But for people who were really, really in love with the way things had been, giving them a toolbox was just such a culture shock.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's from what I've learned from various other people's kind of criticisms and why they can't really get into Rec and something. It's almost like they can't pull out the one tangible kind of chronicle they would run with all these bits there, because there's so much choice, and what would they use? And it's much the same problems when you're choosing, say the difference. Why does Vampire now only have 5 clans to choose from?
Right.
Because back in the old days, you got 13 plus bloodlines plus anything else, and it's like, which do you choose? And really, you're trying to distill it to this one core
very
thing
iconic,
that you could run with. Yeah. No, that'd be really cool, because I think that was a follow-up question. Is the idea of, as you said, not strung along SAS, but the idea of like a kind of like a meta plot book. It's kind of the idea. It's like a chronicle book, which, as I say, tells you take this book and this one, and there's you need to play that story.
Keeping it very well contained, very much. If this is what you're interested in, this example of how you can do this, you can use it. You can use it as is. You can just say, this is now going to be our chronicle because it's cool and I really want to play it. Or you can say, so this is how you take that. Oh, awesome! Now I get it. I can, now I could do for mine what this book is demonstrating you can do. I hope it'll have that kind of useful appeal on a lot of different levels.
Yeah, it'd be really cool to see multiple ones of those, because you could just having 3 different flavors of Vampire plus the toolbox, just general everything Vampire. Because even in my stuff, there's stuff that I look at a book, say in mythology, and it's like, yeah, I'm not going to use that one, not going to use that one, but that's really good, and that goes into my canon. And it's my canon, that is my world, and I know it's completely different to someone else's. Yeah, that's really wicked.
Hopefully.
I would love to see that.
Hopefully you'll see that next year in some way, somehow. But that's something that we're definitely working towards.
Wow, that would be really sweet. Yeah. Mike, you've got another question here.
I don't know who Lost_Heretic is.
Do you not? We've got another question here.
Do you have like an official voice for him different than your other voice? Or?
Shh, guys, you're ruining the illusion. All right, fine. So Lost_Heretic asks, well, we're just kind of mentioning metaplot, sort of. So has the strangeness in the proportion POD been successful enough to warrant further New World of Darkness fiction? Can we wrangle another novel out of Greg Stolze?
So couple things on that level is I'm a big believer in pulling in more fiction. to both the game books and to in just general product stuff. Bearing in mind that what we're not going to do is print up 15,000 paperbacks and try to sell them to the bookstores that don't exist anymore. So what we're doing is very carefully moving forward with, how can we get these things out here? And like you mentioned, Strangers in the Proportion, absolutely. And the other, it was the second runner up to our fiction contest that I think we ran back in the late 40s. I think at this point it's been so long. Called Silent Knife is going to be one of the things that are coming out in this year. So we will definitely have another fiction book out. I think Strangeness was, in my mind, one of my all-time favorite things I've read on any of our fiction. I really loved it. Thought it was the best depiction of Solomon Birch in anything. If you haven't read it, and the main storyline goes through there, but the writer Josh Deutsch does little interstitial vignettes that take place around the world of darkness, and he does one thing with Birch that I was just like, yeah, I know that character. Oh yeah, that's cool. So I like, if you haven't read it and you get a chance, it's really not expensive from drive-through as a PDF or whatever, print on demand. So yeah, we're looking at more sorts of things. One of the things I also am trying to see is when we do a Kickstarter for a major project and we do a deluxe version of that, I really like the idea of fiction, whether novels or novellas or short stories, as part of the stretch goals for that. I think that's a really neat way to be able to proceed with that, because that if the writer's willing to write say a novel for X amount of money, all you need to do then is make sure your stretch goal covers that, and that guy knows he's got a job, to do that. And he's going to get, and we know that we don't have to worry about all the auxiliary stuff that goes into a fiction line. All we need to do is, to all the people who ordered this, it's covered. Here's a fiction PDF. Enjoy, and I think it's a win-win for everybody, and I hope it enables us to get more fiction out there to everybody. We haven't done it yet with any of our stuff. I mean, but that's one of the things I'm looking at for Kickstarters.
Yeah, great. Sounds like a really good idea. So Echo Doken asks, are there any secret projects you'd like to tell us about?
Well, I sort of talked about one of them there.
I really appreciate that.
I talked about the new game in 2013, sort of. Let me see. No, but I will tell you that we will be doing a fair amount of revealing of things on July 15th. So we're going to do a little. Hopefully everybody gets their ducks in a row, and we do a nice combined announcement on the White Wolf site, as well as some of the other things that we're working on, and give a little look into the schedule at that point. There's some things we can't commit on. I mean, obviously, like I would love to be able to just say on July 15th we're definitely doing May 20th, but we're not at that point yet where we can confirm that. But those are the sorts of things we wouldn't have on the schedule necessarily, but certainly we're thinking about.
Indeed. Fair enough. Well, someone had to ask, of course.
Oh, absolutely. And after the 15th, if you guys want to get together again and do a follow up to this where we can talk about some of these things and sort of go into some more details,
that would be awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, favorite piece of art in any World of Darkness book, is that the?
Yeah, it's a rather mean question, I'm sure, but.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, people ask me the same thing. Do you, what's your favorite game line? And really, it's really tough to narrow anything down to something like favorite. And I'm not a real I mean, you probably, if you said what's your favorite movie, I could tell you 5 of my top favorite movies, and then if you want to break them into genre, I could get even but favorite piece of art in any World of Darkness book.
Shall we give him time to think, Mike? What's your favourite?
Oh, I can answer that. So in Vampire the Masquerade, it's in V20 and it's definitely in the revised. It might also be in second edition. There's the coterie of Bruja. They're all standing around like some glowing glow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
I think we got that. I think we got that for revised, and then I also, because it's such a classic, and at this point, people just love that piece that I put in V20.
Mm-hmm.
I think in my favourite from
Greg
Old
Loud
World of Darkness is which one is it? Is the is it revised? Yeah, Virtual Adepts cover by Christopher Shy.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Shy, always a good guy.
Yeah, I love that cover.
He's a neat guy.
Well, I think one of the best pieces of artwork I like from New World of Darkness is the cover for the Free Council for Mage. I think it's really iconic of just how crazy the Free Council is with their magic.
I actually have that right here as well. Yep, that's lovely. You just assume you guys don't have the Skype video on. You can see my wall of White Wolf products behind me.
Unfortunately, we don't have that.
Yeah.
I can also say that I really like the. I've got it right here. It's page 14 of Victorian Lost. It's got a statue in an old park. In the distance, there's this fellow with a top hat. Definitely one that stands out.
Yep. That piece inspired me for one of my Changeling episodes of my Chronicle. So it shows you what a good piece of art can do.
And that's exactly what I love to hear. That I love when people say, inspire me to have this character or to run an entire chronicle or just it was the first time I really got it. I think that's one of the magic things that happens with the visuals.
There's some really nice. Yeah, I like some of the artwork in Victorian Lost. That is really good because obviously it's all original. Yeah, it's predominantly all original art because it
should all be original.
Victorian, it is all. Yeah, so it's really great. I really like the bit where there's a really good image with some sort of motley going down through the hedge, and there's rail tracks through the hedge, and that's just awesome.
Yeah, it was a metaphor they were playing around with a lot in the writing of it. Yeah, it's the steam age. I mean, it's tough for me. Like, I know of. I mean, there's certainly some pieces that Kaluta did for me from Mage, the Awakening, that I absolutely loved. There's the Spider Woman in Forsaken.
Oh yes,
that I thought was awesome. There's a picture in the New World of Darkness core rulebook of a figure and a wheelchair.
Yes, yeah.
Which I have to tell you, all these years of working with all these horror images, that one creeped me out.
I think there's a lot of the digital kind of manipulation artwork in the New World of Darkness core book is just stunning. I think that really sold me on what New World of Darkness is. And I was
very lucky to get. Is it Jason Manley did the full pages, and he nailed what we were going for. Absolutely, it was just absolutely beautiful work. You know what? I will tell you what. Probably my favorite pieces, and I'm sorry for, and I'm sorry for everyone who has other pieces that they love a lot, and then I'm now telling them that this was not legitimate because I love this piece mostly. The cover for Scion Hero is absolutely one of my favorite pieces. You know the one I mean? With the fellow with the gun and the ravens and the runes, and I love that piece. And I think I love it because it was one of those beautiful moments where the sketch that I did got the elements across, and we sent it to him, and when this thing came back, I actually had to sit down and look at it. It was just like, because what I had done was a utilitarian sketch that got the point across, and he had created this beautiful piece of art, and that was a really neat moment, and it happens, it happens a fair amount, but that was, that was one that just blew me away. So, how about that one?
All right, sounds good. So, Rich, this is the question, okay? We ask it to everyone on their first time being on the show.
Okay,
Rich,
cool.
if you could be a household appliance, which would you be and why?
Let me see. So something in the kitchen or around the whole house?
Anything.
I think it's round. Yeah.
Well, you can't be an iPhone, though.
Yes. Yeah. I'm sure someone tried to be an iPhone, but
That was Eddie Webb.
Yeah, I could see that. Weirdly enough, I the first thing that came to mind was the router that I have that connects me up to the internet because I couldn't live without that.
Okay.
So if I was that, I would be sure that I could both, get out into the internet and see all the things that I want to see and stay in connection with everything and be very helpful for my family. Where I think every single one of us uses something that then has to get onto the web. So I think I would feel both useful. And I would be as my own entity. If I had any consciousness, I'd be able to go out and have access to all the information that exists in the world.
All right, good answer. I like that one.
yeah.
Awesome. So, Rich, is there a website that you have, or of course you have your Twitter account, anything like that that'll allow people to get in touch with you?
Well, I mean, you can email. You can email me at richt, RICHT, at theonyxpath.com, which I'll just leave that for you to question about that. TheonyxPath.com. That's the simplest way to get to me. And the Twitter. What is my Twitter anyway? I rarely look at my own name there. Rich_Thomas_WW. And and these days, an enormous amount of information gets posted about on that Twitter. It also goes to my Facebook account, so it's definitely a place where as we're having meetings or we're having discussions or I'm talking for all the different kooky projects we're working on, we're doing updates to Kickstarters and things like that. But one of the things we're going to be talking about on July 15th is hopefully a much more condensed and coherent way of getting information around. I know that it's been tough for people to get to hear everything that White Wolf is up to and Classic World of Darkness and the Onyx Path and all that, and we should be able to enable people to stay on top of that stuff a lot better come the 15th of July.
Very cool. Of course, if you want to get in contact with Darker Days Radio, one of the best ways is to check our Facebook, which is facebook.com/darkerdaysradio. We're on Twitter at Darker Days Radio. Our email address is darkerdaysradio@gmail.com. And of course, there is our Posterous account, which would be posterous.com/darkerdaysradio, which has been really hopping lately. And I think we'd really like to get some more people on there. Chris was kind enough to redo the overall web design of it. It looks a lot nicer.
How do you spell Posterous?
Posterous.
Posterous.
Okay. Yeah, we just use it because whether it's we're reviewing, say, films, which I hope to have something done for, or books, or games, or anything secret frequency like, which we find in our travels and post up there, because it reposts to Facebook, which makes life easy and means we've got all our bases covered.
Yeah.
And people can comment on there and take part in whatever little hunt the reference game that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely a lot nicer for long-form discussion than, say, Facebook is. So that's why we definitely like to encourage it.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm going to check that out.
All right, sounds good. So, Rich, thank you very much for coming on the show. You really helped peel back the veil of White Wolf past and White Wolf present. And really excited to see what comes out of White Wolf in the future.
Yeah. Well, it was awesome, guys. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
July 15th. Yeah.
July 15th.
Did I emphasize that enough? I know.
Sounds good. All right, so that's it for this episode of Dark Days of Radio. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a good night.
Bye.
These individuals could be socially stunted, and one can only imagine their actions in the Shadowlands. And there's a ice cream truck passing right by. Hopefully they don't hear that in the episode. So, in Werewolf the Apocalypse...